PM News.
Good afternoon. My pleasure.
Now, Professor, please explain to us in some simple detail, what does the Auditor General's report entail? Are these good or bad news?
You know, it really gives such a complex, detailed landscape of what is happening in municipal finance in South Africa. And when one talks municipal finance, one talks about municipal governance, and one talks about service to citizens of South Africa. And a big question in South Africa, we know that things are much better than they were 20 years ago in our country. But the question is always, if money had been better spent, if public funds had been better spent, more accountably spent, would our lives, and especially the lives of people who live in poverty and unemployment, have been even better and much better than they are at the moment? And given these results, with such an overwhelming wave of negative findings, one has to, again, feel for citizens whose lives could have been better had these results, had their local governments been managed better. We see small improvements. Certainly, we agree with the ministers and the departments, yes, there are improvements. But the overwhelming finding is still that this essential part of government in South Africa is not functioning optimally, is very often, as you said in your introduction, and as SALGA has acknowledged, plagued by irregular processes and very often adverse findings that are linked to, apart from financial competence not being there in management of the municipalities, also irregular processes, which means, for example, that tender processes had been ignored, and these are probably euphemisms for corruption.
Now, Professor, the fact that only 9% of provinces got a clean report, what does this say about the rest? And in your view, where could these municipalities have gone wrong? Because clearly it is possible to have a great record.
Yes, there is so much that can go right, but there have gone wrong in here. Very often, and we see this graphically in this report, it is not, positions are not filled, and inappropriate people are in positions, and just even consultants are employed. I mean, 60% of the municipalities where consultants were employed to do the financial statements, things still were not right. And we see in some appendix to this report a fascinating listing of details as to what can be done to get better accountability. After all, this is democratic government, and democratic government, one needs accountability. And the list of people who have got oversight over these municipalities, not just internally, their financial managers, chief financial officers and mayors, etc., municipal managers, but beyond that, in the provinces, provincial governments have oversight, and nationally, the Treasury and Department of Cooperative Governance. All of these entities and departments and governments have got oversight over local government, and they can tell government, you do things right or you're out. But that does not happen. So I think the responsibility for this dismal picture that we see in this report goes right to the executive, and that is in cabinet.
Professor, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's Professor Susan Booysen from Wits School of Governance, joining us on the line from the Western Cape to analyze the Auditor General's report, which indicated that 91% of municipalities in South Africa didn't get a clean audit for the period.